Hey guys, this is Mike the Wrestling Godsmith, and you guys are watching All In Wrestling. So look, this video, guys, today is about Jim Cornette talking about the AEW booking in 2023, like 2020, like really this year. And you know what I say to it, because it's not. If it's a rant video, I apologize, guys, but it might be. And the first thing I want to say about Jim Cornette, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a 30-year-old vet in the wrestling business, talking about, oh, AEW, you got Chris Jericho, a guy who's in his midlife crisis, thinking he's a fucking rock star. And I'm like, Jim, and he's talking about, like, it's okay to have 900 viewers and TV ratings have fallen, because TV ratings are falling so low. They love it. That's why they keep it's on national public access. No, Jim Cornette's an idiot. I respect him as a wrestling guy, as a legend in the business. I respect him. But honestly, I think he's probably the worst guy to talk about ratings, because I'm like, bro, and his track record is bad. His track record is so bad that's why we don't really hear that much about him. We don't see him in NWA. We're not going to see him in Ring of Honor. We're not going to see him in the NWA, the company that he had built from the ground up in the 80s. Because, it's funny. He says, WCW, everybody had a finger in that old whore. But I'm like, no. He says that. He said everybody had a finger in it. No, you had a finger in it. Eric had a finger in it. Ted Turner had a finger in it. Brad Ziegler and the guys, the Turner execs, had their finger in WCW because they wanted to beat WWE and they couldn't beat them. And the thing is, when he said 30 years when I worked for Turner Broadcasting, when we had 900 views, that wasn't good enough. I'm like, yeah, it's 30 years ago, dude. It's 30 years ago because guys think they're so much better. And they're going to say that everybody says that AEW is, not as good as WWE. And I look at Dave Meltzer and I'm like, dude, he's right in a sense, but he's not. The reason why AEW is not gonna go out of business is because guys like, I'm like, MJF, if he leaves AEW, then he'll end up being a bidding war. Then go, more power to you. But in the same sense that Jim Cornette thinks, and I've heard it because I've heard this a million times with Eric Bischoff. I've heard this so many times with Conrad, Thompson. I've heard 83 Weeks, the podcast. It's a great podcast. You guys should check it out because it talks about a lot of wrestling stuff. And this is the thing. Like, I've heard so much about these guys and so much about these people and so much about what they're doing, what they did for the business. You're not doing it now. You're not doing it now for the business because I'm like, look, Jim Cornette tried to bring NWA guys to WWE in the 90s, and they failed. They tried to reboot the new Midnight Express. They tried to reboot them. And Dance Irvin, the guy who could have been something if they actually put a little effort into him. But he was so bland, he was so boring, because he kind of made Ken Shamrock actually a good fighter. But the problem is that you had guys that you didn't know how to book. That's one. You had a guy in the company since the beginning of the inception with Jim Crockett. Even when Ted Turner took over for Jim Crockett and Eric Bischoff got taken, and he got taken for J.J. Dillon. And J.J. Dillon, I want to say, was the cause of it too, because they knew what they were doing. Eric Bischoff said they made tail money in 98. Yeah, financially, you guys had more money than WWE. But the funny thing, you didn't have the fans. And I say this with AEW is that AEW does better than WWE now because the fact is we're in a ratings war. Every Monday, AEW is probably getting 8,000 views or 1,000 views a night because they're on YouTube. Then the pay-per-views are being watched more because we're getting a bunch of stories getting booked on very well. And the fact is, they kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And now you're looking at Tony Khan like, oh, that's crazy, Tony. That's crazy. Why do you want to be a book? Why do you want to be a self-booker? Because he doesn't want people ruining the business, and I get that. I get it. Him trying to be a booker and not destroy everything is perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. And I've said this about Jim Cornette. I've said this to him. I've said this about this guy. The guy, I really wish I could talk to him and tell him, like, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. Because you believe in your heart of hearts that AEW is failing. Dave Meltzer believes that he's failing. Eric Bischoff believes that they're failing. And and the thing about Eric Bischoff, I don't hate the guy, because the funny thing is, even when he was in wrestling, you became a legend by being controversial. You became a legend by taking a company from another guy. Because the thing is, even if you guys would have won in W, even if you guys would have won and the roles were reversed in WCW, AEW wouldn't have been an afterthought. AEW wouldn't have existed. And the fact is, everybody keeps saying that AEW's not at the caliber they need to be. Everybody says that, oh, they're so transparent. No, they're not transparent, guys. They're so transparent because they don't do the same thing that WWE does, because they don't have a guy like Vince running the show. That's the only reason their ratings have gone up, because Trips is actually saying, yo, I can book a match how I want to book it. I can give everybody a chance to be stars. And if they leave, they're going to go to AEW and be better stars. That's the purpose. That was the whole purpose of the Monday Night Wars, when people were jumping ship. Bro, brothers were jumping ship to WCW because they were getting paid more from Ted. Hulk Hogan don't even understand it. He's probably paid more because he became a heel and they took 80s wrestlers to go into the 90s. And the problem was they couldn't do it. They couldn't keep up with Shawn Michaels. They weren't going to keep up with Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart at the time. Even if Hogan would have stayed, the butterfly effect, if Razor Ramon would have stayed, and he would have changed the gimmick and he would have did Scott Hall in WWE, and they would have made a faction in WWE just like they did in WCW with the NWO, and they would have brought it to realization. Like, they had Kevin Nash. And all they needed to do was have a catalyst. And this is what I'm saying with AEW. They don't need to do that. They got guys who are legends in there that are coming in and teaching the young generation. That's what it should have been for WCW, but it wasn't. It was the opposite facsimile of it. Because you had the NWO trying to take things, and the same thing I can say with TNA, because when he worked in TNA in 2004, 2003, 2005, they were throwing money at the wall and thinking they were winning. They were still losing to WWE. You had a brand new company that you couldn't even bank, because the funny thing is, Jim Cornette thought he was so great at doing it. He's so great at doing this, but he's so great at doing that. Bro, you got money and you're paid because of the fact you took a company. TNA could have been something if guys like you weren't trying to run the show. And I've said this, is that he had a company. TNA doesn't even exist as much because the fact that everybody who were in TNA, all the good guys that were in TNA, made a faction of it. And the thing is, you see Jim Cornette, but you don't really see what has he done with the money he's gotten. This brother hasn't done anything. So to make himself relevant, he goes to, inside the ropes, does a couple of questions a year. No. You know what Eric Bischoff does now that he's so relaxed? He has a podcast about talking about what he's been doing. JR's got a podcast of talking about what he did in the 90s. The fact that he still gets paid, Tony Schiavone has enough money to relax and retire, because if he really wanted to do it, Tony would pay him. Because I'm like, bro, TNA could have been a company if everybody wasn't trying to get high. Because you had guys that didn't need to be in TNA that should have never came in existence. You had Tony Schiavone coming back to try to be a broadcaster for TNA because Mike Tenay was there. And the problem with Mike Tenay is that WWE wants him, but nobody really knows what Mike Tenay is gonna do. And everybody likes Mike Tenay, but the problem was he was already a well-mannered broad color commentator because the WCW gave him his spot. And then because Eric Bischoff was running the NWO and running the company and running NWO and had a bunch of creative inmates running the asylum thing, is that in the world, and I say this with all my heart, and I say this because when you got a guy that's not a Vince guy who's running the company is gonna flourish because you just made $100 million in a day because of Revolution, because of the ticket sales. And the fact that we got a death match and we got sudden death in the middle of the Iron Man match, which is the best thing I could say, because it wasn't a bullshit finish. We thought we were going to get that. They thought they were just going to let it play out. No. Bryan Danielson did it, and he's going to get another chance at that title, a double or nothing, because they're going to make it so big for anybody to win. They're going to make it so big for anybody to win the Casino Battle Royale. They're going to let him win. They're going to let Jungle Boy win, because now Jungle Boy can focus on him. Will Yuta's going to be something. Mox is going to be something, because Mox came out to fight. And now we kind of got the idea what we're going to do with that. Now we kind of got an idea of the future. So I say to Jim Cornette, and I've said this before, guys, and I don't hate Jim Cornette. I'm saying this with all the respect I have for him. I say this. Jim Cornette, you don't deserve, like, bro, you've been in the wrestling business for 30 plus years. You, Eric Bischoff, all these guys, David, Jim Crockett. I've seen everything that you guys have done. For the business. And I've seen it. I've witnessed it. I have seen a bunch of things that most people do not even fathom that they're trying to get. So I say this, guys, like I said, this is not a rant videos, but I apologize. And I said this before. I don't hate Jim Cornette. I don't hate what he's doing. I just don't like the guy because he comes in and says a bunch of things that doesn't really, because he's got no facts. He's got no facts, guys. And the booking decision for AEW is probably the best booking decision we've gotten since WWE. And I could say WWE's bookers are really, they're a bunch of idiots because they're not doing it. We got a month before WrestleMania, and literally we're still switching things in WrestleMania 39. The biggest WrestleMania of the year. And in retrospect, if Cody Rhodes wins, I'm happy. If Rowan wins, I'm happy. I just want to see the story come to an end like he said it was going to come to an end. Because I'm tired of the promos between freaking Paul Heyman. I'm tired of the promos between him and Roman. And I'm glad they finally met face to face. But here's the joke about it. Everybody says that, Cody coming back 7 years later. Yeah, it's a great thing because now the guy's not freaking, because the WWE was sucking the life out of him. He wasn't becoming anything. Same thing with Bo Dallas, because I'm like, bro, Bo Dallas is not coming back. Curtis Axel's not coming back. All those guys they had 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, all those guys they had 5 or 10 years ago are all gone. And the fact that you let Sasha Banks walk through your fingers, and she said thank you, because they gave her a chance and she excelled. And the thing is, if Ronda decides to leave, because that's why she doesn't want a main title, because if she decides to leave and says, you know what, me and Baszler did the tag thing, and we won. We did it. Because the thing is, if they win those tag titles, then Damage Control is going to want to win. And the funny thing is, everybody has fought and done a bunch of craziness and done everything, because now Shayna Baszler is actually attacking people. She's actually attacking people. But the funny thing is, if she's attacking people, then it's made a thing. And now, because I've said this before, WWE knows what they want to do with people, and 2K want to know what they're doing, but they haven't done much. But like I said anyway, guys, like, comment, subscribe. Peace.